If there's one series in the last 20 years that we owe our gratitude to as gamers, it's Super Smash Bros. Now, hear me out for a second. I know some of you will immediately think of a game like Zelda, Mario, or Grand Theft Auto when this comes to mind, but this series managed to bring Ness, Lucas, Meta Knight, Pit, and even Mr. Game & Watch back into the spotlight after years of obscurity. This is Gabe from CGRundertow, and there's no series this is more apparent in than the incredible Fire Emblem games for the Game Boy Advance. In fact, these were so popular that it led to Nintendo releasing a Fire Emblem game for the GameCube. This is Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. For those of you who are familiar with the character Ike from Super Smash Bros. Brawl, you'll be excited to know that he's one of the main characters in this game. Now, Ike finds himself thrust into the spotlight as the leader of a small group of mercenaries after his father meets an untimely death, and he must stick together with his fellow fighters as they force invading countries out of their native Crimea. The story isn't groundbreaking, and it relies on the standard Nintendo concepts of perseverance, friendship, and trust, but that doesn't mean it isn't unique in its own way. It's actually quite special if you dig beneath the surface, mainly due to the structure of the gameplay, but I'll get to that in just a moment. While Fire Emblem Path of Radiance is a turn-based strategy game, it doesn't fall into some of the classic traps that have plagued the genre. Instead of having a bunch of nameless, faceless grunts to help him on his journey, Ike is given his own cast of memorable characters that each have their own advantages and disadvantages. They all have to be kept up with a supply of weapons, using a rock-paper-scissors formula to fight, and many of them will interact differently with characters based on choices they make. Now here's the kicker that makes the Fire Emblem story so engaging. With the exception of Ike and a few other main characters, anyone can die in the game at any moment. If a character you like happens to get killed, the game just keeps moving forward, and it's your decision whether you want to restart the level or just continue playing. This can be a huge decision at times, as some characters are almost required to make it to the end, while others are basically just there to help you level up the weaker ones.
That song.
Ah, you're up. About time.
Speaking of which, the game is brutally difficult. Even though as a turn-based strategy game you can go at your own pace, Path of Radiance is very unforgiving. It isn't exactly frustrating, as dying is usually the player's fault, but this is one game that is going to bring some angry pacing around the room along with it. Especially if you were close to the end of a level and one of your main characters gets burnt to a crisp by some magic wielder's fiery deep fry attack. But that doesn't mean that it isn't fun. Quite the contrary, in fact. This is one of the most addictive games on the GameCube, and the fact that its average length is about 25 hours makes that a very good thing. Path of Radiance also really showed us what the GameCube is capable of producing, as the game was released near the end of the console's lifespan. Although true cutscenes in the game are few and far between, the ones that are included look pretty good, even better than a lot of recent games. The frame rate is amazing, and voice acting is actually much better than a game like this would usually entail. When there aren't real cutscenes, the game switches to a text-based system that relies on still images of characters to keep the story moving forward. Now, while this would usually bother me, it's executed with so much precision and care that I almost prefer this system to true cutscenes. Almost. Movement is still a good thing. The Fire Emblem series has not exactly been under the radar since its introduction to North America, but it still is not recognized as the masterpiece that it is, and there is no better example of this than in Fire Emblem Path of Radiance for the Nintendo GameCube. We like Ike. A lot.